What's up, guys? I'm here to do my predictions for UFC Fight Night McGregor versus Siver. Let's start at the bottom. First fight is Tataki Matsuda versus Jacob Sanchez. I saw both these guys debut. Matsuda's pretty much just a striker. He's got decent takedown defense and he's pretty decent at getting up, but aside from that, he's really just a striker, and that's where I think the big difference in this fight is. Jacoby Sanchez looked really good in his debut against Wilson Reyes. It was a really close fight. The fact that he had such a close fight was such a good fighter shows me that he's somebody to watch in the future. Yeah, I got Sanchez winning this one. I think he'll probably win by decision just because I think Matsuda's never been finished, but I see this being a one-sided fight for Jacoby. I think he gets this win, and then he'll really start to get some better guys at flyweight. Next is Matt Van Buren from The Ultimate Fighter, the runner-up, against Shane O'Connell. And to me, Shane O'Connell's last fight, I thought he won against Vellante. And Matt Van Buren, both these guys are kind of similar. I think they're both kind of strikers with decent grappling. I think this one's really going to depend on who uses the, if Shane O'Connell can get in past Matt Van Buren's reach, I think he'll win. And vice versa, I think if Matt Van Buren can keep him on the outside, he'll probably win. Grappling, I think they're pretty even. I think this fight's going to be really close. I think it's either going to end in a knockout pretty early, or it's going to be a really close split decision, but either way, I think Matt Van Buren pulls out by this much. I think this is probably one of the more closer fights on the whole card, because neither of these guys look like they're the greatest light heavyweights ever, but I think this fight will be a good fight. So I'm going to pick Matt Van Buren, let's say third round TKO. Next we got Charles Rosa versus Shane Soriano. And if you saw Charles Rosa's debut, he was really good. I mean, against Dennis Siver, he looked like a top 15 guy. It's just, he took the fight on short notice with Siver, but it was a great fight, that one fight of the night, and I think he showed that he's really good everywhere. He's got great striking and great grappling. As for Shane Soriano, the two fights I've seen him in, he really has a hard time against wrestlers, and I think, this is the first fight he's getting that's not against a wrestler, but I don't think that's going to matter. I think Charles looked a lot better in his one loss versus Shane Soriano's 2 losses. So I'm going to pick Charles Rosa. I'm going to say submission, just because I think he is a little bit more of a jiu-jitsu guy with good striking, but I think Charles Rosa looks like a bright prospect. Next we got Johnny Cash versus Frankie Perez, and to me Perez is just kind of a jiu-jitsu guy with decent wrestling, as with Johnny Cash is more of a striker but has decent takedown defense and decent jiu-jitsu. So I'm going to pick Cash. I think that if this fight stays standing, which I think it will, he'll probably get the knockout. So I'm going to pick Johnny Cash by second round knockout. Next we got Patrick Houlihan versus Shane Howell, and just like with Shane Howell's debut, I think they were feeding him to an up-and-comer so they could give him a win. I think the same thing with this. I think Patrick Houlihan's just a better fighter, and because he lost that last fight, they're trying to get him back on track, especially since this is an Irish guy fighting in Ireland. So I'm going to pick Houlihan by submission, since pretty much all of his wins are by submission. Next we got Zhang Liping versus Chris Wade, and this fight's hard to call just because it seems like they try to give these Chinese fighters guys they can beat just because they want to grow that fan base. So I have no idea. I think Chris Wade's pretty good, but sometimes, the matchmakers see holes that, the other guy can exploit. I'm going to pick Wade, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zhang wins just because there's probably something that I'm not seeing that Zhang can exploit. But if there isn't, I think Wade's the better wrestler, and like I've said before, I don't think Chinese MMA is on the level of, Korean or Japanese MMA. I think it's the farthest behind in terms of just pure Asian MMA. So I've got Wade by submission. Next we got John Howard versus Lorenz Larkin, and both these guys, their striking style is kind of similar, their builds are kind of similar, but the big thing for me is I think John Howard, he's been fighting at this weight class longer, and he's been, doing really well recently, as Lorenz Larkin's. Even though both these guys have lost their last couple, I think John Howard's losses were really close, and Lorenz Larkin was like getting knocked out and dominated on the ground. And this is his first time jumping to 170. I think that's going to be the big difference. I'm going to pick Howard. I think Howard is just more used to fighting at this weight, and he's been fighting, he's been having really close fights with really good people, as where Lance Larkin hasn't looked that great. So I'm going to pick John Howard by decision. Next we got Cathal Pendred versus Shane Spencer, and this fight's hard to call just because if Cathal can really get his takedowns, he'll probably win, but if Shane Spencer can use his foot movement, then he'll win the decision. It's really close, but I'm gonna pick Cathal. This one's tough too. I really don't know. I think that it could go either way, but I'm gonna pick Cathal by split decision, mainly because it's an island, and if the fight is close, then I think Cahal's gonna take it. Next, main card, we got Norman Park versus Gleason Tebow, and to me this is where Norman Park is probably going to hit his wall, because to me Gleason Tebow is probably the best guy he's ever fought, and their styles are really similar. I think Norman Park is a little bit faster and he uses more volume, but I think in terms of like the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, Gleason Tebow's better, and I think Gleason Tebow's going to win this one by decision. Just because to me Norman Park looks good, but he doesn't look great, and Tebow is one of those guys who he's good but not great either, but he kind of cusps on that line. So I'm gonna pick Tebow by decision. I think that he'll win the first 2 rounds, probably lose the third because he'll gas out, but I just think Tebow's a little bit better at everything except for cardio. Norman Park will probably win the third, but I don't think he'll win the fight. Next we got Uriah Hall versus Ron Stallings, and I think this is like the 3rd or 4th replacement for Uriah Hall. Guys just keep getting injured, and I think this guy's I think he just took this fight like yesterday. So I'm gonna pick Hall by knockout. I just think that's way too little time, and they're trying to get Uriah Hall on a win streak. So it's no offense to Ron Stallings, I think he's a pretty decent fighter. I don't think he's great, I just think he's decent. But I think too short notice, and he's fighting a guy who's just, in my opinion, a lot better than him. So I'm going to pick Uriah Hall by knockout. Next we got Cerrone versus Ben Henderson, and even though Ben has won both those fights, I thought Cerrone won the first one. So to me this is kind of like the trilogy fight right here. It would have been cooler if Cerrone had won that first fight, because then this fight would feel like it would have meaning, as where even if Cerrone wins this fight, he still lost the other 2. I'm gonna pick Cerrone. I think he's on a roll right now, and I think the fact that he took this fight so quick is actually better for him, because he's one of those guys, I think when he has momentum he does better. When he takes the long breaks, I think that's when he starts to lose a little mentally. So I'm gonna pick Cerrone. I don't know, he might win by submission. Ben Henderson's submission defense hasn't been looking ultra great as it was back in the WEC, so I'll pick Cerrone by submission. Main event, Conor McGregor versus Dennis Siver, and to me, I feel like nobody's giving Dennis Siver a shot in this fight, and I don't know why, because I think Dennis Siver is one of the best wrestlers in this division, definitely top 5. I don't know, he's beaten really good wrestlers like Matt Wyman and like Manny Gambirian, and there was one other really good wrestler that he beat, but you know what I mean, he's a great wrestler and a great jiu-jitsu guy. You watch his last fight and you see how amazing his grappling actually is, and I think that's the big difference in this fight, is we've never seen Conor McGregor on the ground really, and I don't think the striking has such a huge gap where Conor's just going to be able to lay him out like a lot of the guys he has. I think the striking's really close in this fight. So I actually think Siver's going to win this fight by decision. I think that the grappling is, people are really underestimating Siver, and I don't know why. I think there's a reason why he's been in the top 10 almost his whole career, at lightweight and at 145. He's almost the very beginning of his career in the UFC was he not in the top 10. So I think he was really underrated in this fight, and I think his grappling is a lot better than Conor's. I mean, Conor McGregor is a brown belt, but I don't know why he has a brown belt. It's just weird. But those are my picks. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.